Happy Thanksgiving, everybody. And I hope you had a great Thanksgiving today. Hope you did not stuff yourself too much with that turkey or anything else that you ate during Thanksgiving. And for all of you that are able to survive this Thanksgiving dinner after sitting with your annoying cousin or relative, I salute you, because that is not a very good feeling. Have to deal with your annoying cousin during the dinner table for almost the entire time of this Thanksgiving. But all I will say about that is that, I certainly salute you for surviving that, and also at least you're not an NYCFC fan, because if you're an NYCFC fan, yeah, it has been another frustrating year for you. And there was so much promise in the first half of the season for this team. This team was right up there as one of the best team in the league and was considered to be favorites and maybe even knock out Atlanta United when both of them potentially could face each other in the conference final. Obviously, that did not happen, and obviously there was a combination of the fact that Patrick Vieira left this team, and once Domen Turin decided to take over this team, he kind of wrecked this team, and he kind of changed the philosophy in a bad way. And also the fact that you add into the injury effect that they had, and so many guys on this team this season, including their biggest star, David Villa, was injured this season. Yeah, that's kind of summarized what happened to this season for NYCFC and why the second half of the season they had such a downfall. But either way, overall, in terms of their regular season record, they had 16 wins, 8 draws, and 10 losses with 56 points. They have scored 59 goals while allowing 44 for a plus 15 goal differential. And again, they got eliminated in the conference semifinal. And I believe this is the third time in their franchise history, and I think the third time in 6 years, that they have got knocked out in the conference semifinal. Yikes. That is just brutal. In terms of the top goal scorer, unsurprisingly, David Villa with 14 goals. Tajuri Shradi with 11 goals, which I'll talk a little bit more about Tajuri Shradi. And one of the few things, well, I wouldn't say few things, but one of the good things that happened to NYCFC this year, Maxi Morales with 8 goals, Jesus Medina with 6, and Antoine Tinnerholm with 4, rounding up your top 5 goal scorer list. Top assist leader, Maxi Morales with 16 assists. Unsurprisingly, that he has had a lot of assists, because that's one of his best skill, and certainly Maxi Morales is considered one of the best creative player in this league. Jesus Medina with 7 assists, Antoine Tinnerholm with 6 assists, David Villa with 5 assists, and Yangel Herrera with only 4 assists. And Herrera is also another guy that is considered one of the best kind of creative player in this league. But the problem for him is that throughout this season, he's been spending most time on the IR, and because of that, he didn't really play for this team a whole lot, and only got 4 assists this season. So what went right for NYCFC this season? I guess they made the playoffs again. I mean, that's kind of a good thing for them, and I think this is now 4 seasons in a row that they have made the playoffs. I think the only time they did not make the playoffs in their existence in MLS is the first season in MLS, and they finally won a playoff series. I mean, they did beat the Union to finally end that curse that they have been having in the previous playoff series, where they just, whenever they go into a playoff series, they always come out of that on the losing side. So at least they kind of break that curse in terms of still haven't been able to win a playoff series in their MLS history. And also Tajuri Shradi with a breakout year. Tajuri Shradi, for a majority part of last year, was just kind of a substitute for this team. He usually is kind of like on the reserve and kind of on the bench. And then when NYCFC was hit with injury, he kind of comes in and he basically just completely lights it up. I mean, the first half of the season, he had an amazing start. He was in just incredible form and really got a lot of people attention of the fact that who is this kid and how in the world does he make such a big impact, even though he's been spending times on the bench and usually come off the bench for this NYCFC team in the past. And you know, certainly this will be one of the big pieces that they're gonna have in the future, and maybe this is one of the guys that they will definitely look for in terms of the goal scoring department in the future. Because for a majority part of the season, when David Villa was not playing for this team because he was on the injury list, Tajiri Shradi was really the goal scorer for this NYCFC team. What needs to improve for NYCFC? Well, let's just say that there's a lot that they need to improve. And the most obvious thing that they need to improve is that they got to figure out this problem that they have in the playoffs, which is they just cannot get over the hump. I mean, every single season they have got close to the conference semifinal, but yet they just cannot get to the next level. Well, actually, they didn't get to the conference semifinal every single season. They've gone to the conference semifinal 3 out of their 4 playoff tries, but every season they just lose in the conference semifinal. They just cannot get over that hump and get into the conference final. And many people thought this year was perhaps the year where they finally can get over that hump. Nope, doesn't seem like it whatsoever. And I get some NYCFC fan will say, well, we play against Atlanta United, and Atlanta United is a team that, you know, they were one of the team that almost won the Supporters Shield this year, and probably should have won the Supporters Shield this year, have not. The Red Bulls also had a historic year, and that, you know, that was a much tougher opponent than we had to face to potentially get into the conference semifinal compared to the past opponent that they play in the conference semifinal. Which, yes, it's true in a way. I mean, I remember they also had to face against TFC back in 2016 or 2015, and they lost that one really badly. And I don't really need to tell you how much they lost, because NYCFC fans want to never hear about that conference semifinal, but they just cannot get over the hump. And, you know, one thing I will say about that Atlanta team is that although that Atlanta team was considered one of the best that we have seen in MLS, this was a team that kind of were in a little bit of turmoil heading into the playoffs, and I thought for sure NYCFC was going to capitalize that, especially also with the fact that Atlanta team was having Miguel Almiron just came back from his hamstring injury, and you know that hamstring injury is not very easy to recover straight away, and yet they couldn't take advantage of that, and once again they bowed out in the playoffs in the conference semifinal. And then the second thing that they need to improve is the struggle that they had in the second half of the season. I remember last season when they were coming into the playoff, they had some similar struggles heading into the second half of the season. Well, albeit maybe the last 2 months of the season that they started to really struggle. But this season, it was kind of like the entire second half of the season, where as soon as Patrick Vieira left this team, and as soon as Dominic Turin came into this team, that's when it gone terribly wrong. And I'll get to Dom Turin and talk about, you know, whether or not what is he gonna do in the future, because there's already some rumor that confirmed that Dom Turin is gonna stay with NYCFC for another season. And I'll talk a little bit more about him in the moving forward part, and whether or not if he is going to be definitely in the hot seat heading into next season. And then the last thing that they need to improve is that they lack depth. And I think another thing that I also would want to add in this is that they had a lot of injury doing this season. They lost a couple of big kind of star players throughout the season. As I mentioned, David Villa has spent time on the IR a couple of time this season. Same with Maxi Morales and Jesus Medina, and of course, Yangel Herrera also spent time on the IR. And once all those big star players that they miss, that's when this team just does not look like the same. I mean, their replacement just does not really kind of like at least show some similar quality to the star players that they have, which usually when you have to go with your second string, that of course happens. But when we saw what happened in the second half of the season, and once all those guys went down from injury, and when you know that your second string is definitely not good and that they are not going to win you games, that's when you know that you lack depth. And this team certainly lacked that depth, and I'm hoping that in the near future they probably maybe adjust some issue and maybe add a couple of guys in terms of that depth chart. But moving forward for NYCFC, what will be this team like after David Villa leaves? And this is probably one of the big things that NYCFC is going to have to do in the off season, besides adding more depth in their squad, is that they might have to think about how in the world they are going to move forward without David Villa. And David Villa is really the last great kind of player that they had, that they signed from Europe, and all those aging kind of European star like him and Frank Lampard and Andrea Pirlo, all of them is gone now. So now how do you replace them? Well, I wouldn't say replace them, because replacing David Villa is obviously going to be very tough, but how do you move in terms of the transitional phase? And when David Villa leaves, does this team take a step backwards because of him leaving? And since Villa this season, like he has been for the past couple of seasons, means so much for this team, when he's on the pitch, this NYCFC team tends to just look so much better without him. So now with him not being in this team anymore, does that mean NYCFC will get worse? And will this transitional phase be very smooth as they head into the next season when David Villa is not going to be there? And I know it hasn't been confirmed that David Villa is officially left NYCFC, but there's been a lot of speculation that he's not staying with that team, and that this year was his last year of his contract, and there is just no plan of him saying that he wants to renew his contract and stay for this club for one more year. The second thing that moving forward for them is that Dom Torren, could he be on the hot seat? Could he be joining Jim Curran as one of the most likeliest coach to get fired next season? And I think the answer has to be yes, because when you look at what has happened this season and the tactics that he's trying to implement and the system that he has tried to change from the Patrick Vieira system, it just does not work. Like, it has not gone very smoothly, and unless he decided to know that the tactics that he's using is not working, and that maybe he need to kind of revert back to what Patrick Vieira did in terms of how he set up this team and some of the tactics that he used on the pitch, he's got to figure out a way to get his team to adapt to his philosophy and his tactics, because if his team does not adapt to it, and if he does not figure it out, like what we saw in the second half of this season, he could be gone before the second half of the season next year. I mean, he could be, NYCFC, their fans are definitely not going to be very patient with this team in terms of, being very bad and potentially not going to make the playoffs after they did for the past couple of seasons. And I know NYCFC is in some way kind of sort of in a transition with David Villa leaving, but this team still has a lot of talent on this squad, and that if Dom Torren did exactly what he did in the second half of the season heading into next season, I'm assuming that he will be gone. before the second half of the season next year. And then, of course, finally, when are they going to get their new stadium? I mean, this has been a question that I'm pretty sure every MLS fan has been asking, and just every MLS fan hate the fact that NYCFC is still playing in a baseball stadium. And I have to agree with them. Like, it is getting absolutely ridiculous, the fact that Yankee Stadium is still home of NYCFC. I mean, originally when NYCFC chose Yankee Stadium, I thought for sure that that was just their temporary home and that they would eventually figure it out, build a new stadium, and they'll move out of it. But now we're heading into, the 5th year of NYCFC existing, and they're still playing in Yankee Stadium. I mean, it's not just the field configuration that makes the league look back and makes this team just always get kind of laughed at, and how teams are always angry the fact that they have to play in a small size kind of field. But it's also just people watching on TV. I mean, when you watch the playoff game this season that NYCFC had on FS1, you can see how bad the camera angle is and how bad those kind of fences from the Baseball Confederation is kind of gets in the way, and it's just absolutely ridiculous. Like, that should not be something any soccer fans and any MLS fans should deal with, and I'm just hoping that they eventually get their new stadium soon. I mean, it's just absolutely inexcusable, the fact that they're still playing at Yankee Stadium. And all this time that Don Garber talk about how teams have to have a soccer-specific stadium, yeah, what about NYCFC? They should have a soccer-specific stadium right now, but instead they're still playing in a baseball stadium, and they're still sharing the same stadium that the New York Yankees is playing, and that is just, it just shows you how bad this situation in terms of the stadium is, and how fans are just going to continue to make fun of NYCFC in terms of them playing in a baseball stadium. But yeah, either way, guys, that is pretty much it for this Moving Forward series for NYCFC. I got one more team to do tomorrow, which I believe that's Columbus. And also, I think tomorrow I'll also do the preview for the conference final first leg. That is going to be happening on Sunday. And yeah, hope you guys enjoyed this video. If you do, make sure you guys leave a like, smash that subscribe button, and yeah, I will see you guys next time.